Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of League of Inches podcast, the grand final qualifiers review. So, finals week 3, going to get a bit of a deep dig into the bloody tongue twister there, almost into both games and our views. Myself and I got Jake along this time with me. Trav wasn't able to make it. A bit of a shout out to Trav. He wanted to debate with me heavily, he said, about this Nelson Asafa Solomona incident. And I was so looking forward to it. He reckons he's got notes upon notes written down to really put me into the dirt. And then last minute, conveniently, he's not here. So typical of, I guess, a Storm supporter. When you really need them to dig deep, they just sort of disappear. But here we go. We're going to get straight into it. First game, Jakey boy. First of all, actually, how you been? It's been a couple of weeks without you on the pod. People are probably worried, thought you had left, but you are still around. Just can't do Mondays.
No, I just can't do Mondays. Mondays are the day that I have set aside for other things, so I just can't do them. And usually the review was on a Sunday, so I was good for it. But, I can fill in if needed on a Wednesday or whatever other day we need. I'm alive. I'm still well and in a good mood.
That sounds dodgy. What are you getting up to on a Monday? You can't let anyone in.
No. I mean, look, so myself and the missus just do a set Monday sort of
hanky.
No, not necessarily. Just a set date night that I've said I won't put anything else in the way of. So I've
got a missus, to be honest. It's been basically podcasting has taken over my life. So what's that?
I said, how long has it been since you've seen her? You've been podcasting.
Oh, mate, honestly, there's like a lump that is next to my bed or in my bed every night, but apparently it's the missus. I forgot what she's looked like, as I said, and I'm just so entrenched into this podcasting game and League of Inches, guys. I hope you appreciate it. And for that, give us a like, give us a follow. Let's get smack bang into it. The Storm beating the Roosters 48 points to 18. They almost put the Roosters on the list in a grand final qualifier, which was a bit crazy. The Storm was simply far too good, outmuscled the Roosters in probably every aspect of the game. And that started from the first hit-up, which we need to talk about. There's obviously been a lot out there. I put a little quick video out there the day after it happened, and I had a bit of talking points around it. It feels like it's more divided than I thought it should be, if I'm going to be honest about that. For me, looking at it, I was a neutral fan. There's been people on the page saying and claiming I'm a Roosters fan. Mate, I don't know if you can see there, but I'm clearly not a Roosters fan. But anyway, I'm just a footy fanatic. I've watched a lot, and for mine, it was for a number of years now, that hit has been a sin bin. And let's just first of all start with the sin bin. We'll open this up and unpack it a bit more, Jake, the whole incident, and then post stuff as well. But to you, that first initial hit when we seen it live, then the first replay, sin bin sufficient?
Yeah. Look, is it sufficient? Look, I think it is. Okay. I don't think that Nelson did necessarily enough to warrant being sent off, because he didn't have a forceful swinging arm or anything like that. It was high contact, yeah, but it wasn't necessarily intentional, but it was forceful. He needed to be sent off for 10 for sure. I wouldn't say it was anything further than that, but it definitely needed to happen. I'm very happy with the call.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And the initial situation when it first happened, Collins goes off, and basically no one knew yet a category 1 or a category 2 or whatever it was going to be. We weren't too sure. My next part into this was, for mine, if a player he took out Lindsay Collins from the game, he was done. He played one run. He played 10 seconds of this game, and that was huge for the Roosters. This isn't a rep star prop. This is one of the better props in the game that we've got. Obviously for Queensland, Australia, he's done everything. And I get how the Storm played the rest of that game, and I understand. I don't know if he would have been able to stop every try, and that's what people's argument is. That's not what my argument is, but it impacted the forward rotation for the Roosters quite heavily. And what I keep coming back to people and saying is that the Roosters had the advantage for 10 minutes, yes, But for the rest of that game, for 70 minutes of that game, the Melbourne Storm had the advantage because they got to play a game against a team with one less player, which was one of their starting middles, which would have been huge and really mucked up the rest of their rotations for pretty much the rest of the game. And it made a lot of their middles overplay minute-wise, and that affected their defensive style. And that's why I feel like a lot of their tries, they started to just open up the Roosters because there was players doing things that they're not used to doing in their biggest game of the season.
Well, a big thing with that, you've got Spencer Leniu, right, who I would argue is probably the biggest / not biggest, best impact bench player, bench roll forward in the competition. That's what I'd say he's absolutely best at. And he was forced to come on in the first few minutes. That wasn't part of the plan. Do you know what I mean? So the whole plan got thrown right out the window straight away, like you were saying. And this is a separate thing, but personally, if I was Robbo, I would have put on what's his name? What's their other
Terrell
prop?
May.
Terrell May, absolutely, because different motor. But I get what he did. Anyway, Spencer Leniu would have been better off coming off, that 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, and having that massive impact that he would have had. But that got nullified because Lindsay got sent off. And, even if it was an accident, okay, it's still forceful contact to the head, and a player, like you said, one of their best forwards, starting forward in that rotation, which is a good forward rotation, got sent. So got taken off for the game. So I don't know, maybe something needs to be looked into, some sort of potential rule adaptation where, it starts off with a sent for 10, but then if the player doesn't return, the person who hit them doesn't return, something along those lines. I'd be willing to see something along those lines myself, but we do change rules every year. Sometimes a rule needs to stay a rule. So I don't know. That's a tough one.
It just doesn't sit well with me. It just doesn't sit well that Nelson's done an illegal action. At the end of the day, he hit him high. He's taken him out. While that 10-minute period is happening, we're already getting the results back about the HIA. So we know Collins is gone for the game. I don't know why the NRL can't come down into the Storm and go, what's happened now? The sin bin's turned into a send-off for Nelson due to the fact that the player that he's made the illegal move on cannot return. So we're going to even things up here. Nelson's done because Lindsay Collins is done. I don't know if that's not a drastic rule change in my opinion. That's just something to level up the playing field and make it a more even game in my opinion, because this is in one of those instances where I don't think 10 minutes was enough because we could see the impact that it had from the Roosters' perspective.
The only tough one about doing that sort of rule change would be the current minutes that each one takes. So, obviously you sent for 10, but a HIA test takes 15 minutes. That'd be the only real possible issue I could see with it, is because if that takes that last 5 minutes to figure out if they have that category 1 or 2, which it does sometimes, then does that player take the field again and then come back off again? Or, from there. But look, I definitely think that a sin binning was fair in that scenario, but I just think should there be a longer punishment if, it might not even have to be a full game. Could there be some extension to it? I don't know.
Where are you at with the suspension side of things for Nelson? I think it's a 4-week ban. And from everything, it's because of priors as well. He's had 2 other instances this year, which has impacted on that. It wouldn't have been initial. People blowing up going, how do you get 4? It's not that hit. That hit hasn't given him 4 weeks. It's the actual priors that has given him 4 weeks. He's done. Now this is his 3rd offense this year. That's not good. Where are you at with it? Do you agree with the suspension side of things? Are you in the basket if it's too harsh? Where are we at?
No, it's not too harsh. Look, again, you've had priors. You're hitting someone in the head. You've hit multiple people in the head. And if it's the same offense that keeps happening, you're doing something wrong. You need to fix it. You're the one doing something wrong. You are a big guy. You need to get lower. Simple as that. He's one of the biggest, if not the biggest players in the NRL. He needs to get lower. And, you get taught that from a young age. And if you're too lazy to do that, then you reap the consequences. Sorry about it. I think 4 weeks is perfectly valid.
It really gets to me that people are coming out saying you can't miss a grand final for it. Don't commit the offense. Improve your tackling technique. You've been suspended a number of times now. When are we going to start putting a bit more of this onto the player instead of bagging the NRL? It seems like all the past players now just want to bag the game and say they're doing a shit job, basically. They've refereed to the rules in this one. This was they've done everything by the book. It should not matter, and I keep saying this to everyone who I keep seeing say it. Doesn't matter about the time. It doesn't matter what round it is. It doesn't matter. It's the actual contact is what we're trying to get out of the game. We're trying to protect players' heads. This is the thing. Like if this causes Lindsay Collins now later in life to have some unfortunate brain injuries or something, are we going to go back in there and go, oh, it was unfortunate because it was a finals? No, we're not. There's going to be stuff that happens because it's happened in the game and it's happened by an illegal shot. So we've got to get a bit more fair income, I feel like, with this sort of stuff. And that's a lot to do with a lot of these, I guess, the podcasts and stuff, the ex-players and that who are on their high horse now going, oh, you can't miss a grand final for this. This is not right. Don't forget, Cam Smith got suspended in a grand final, and that was only a 1 week suspension. Like, there's some big players that have missed big games because of suspensions. This isn't the first one, and unfortunately, it's happened to a guy that's a thug and known for it. So I don't think it's harsh at all. I just think well done to the games who are actually getting it right and actually having the thick skin. Now, we're speaking before anything's happening in terms of challenges and that, but my understanding is it's going to be one of the hardest things to get anything down. He's going to have to do a double downgrade, which I don't think has ever happened in the game. So it's very, very hard. We'll see what happens.
I don't think he wins the appeal. No. There's no reason. There's no evidence. There's no reason why he should. He won't.
So going on the rest of the game, the Melbourne Storm were clinical. There is no doubt about that. So Storm fans, don't get too angry at us. You were very, very good. The spine, I want to talk about the spine because for mine, it was one of the best games of football by a complete spine unit that I think I've seen for a very, very long time. They were all on and they all had good parts at certain parts of the game. It's like they shared the load basically, which is a very, very dangerous thing. Normally it's one spine member, or for the Storm sort of side of things, it's maybe two of them will stand up and the other two sort of take a backward step. But it was just very scary to see all of them have moments. I was sort of looking at trying to do a post tomorrow about the player of the round. And honestly, it's so hard to pick between those four. It's ridiculous. So what were your thoughts on the spine for the Melbourne Storm and that performance?
One of my biggest criticisms over mostly this year, but other years as well, with Cameron Munster is that when he's on the field, he tends to take the limelight off Hughes. Now, this season with Hughes having such a massive season, it's been more obvious in different games, but this game you couldn't see it at all. Like, they both worked together in harmony. Although the only real criticism I even had was that they maybe ran too much on fifth tackle plays at sometimes. But at the same time, if that's what they think is the best option and they're just going to hold that sort of field position and that's what they're happy to do and back their defense, well, fair enough then. You know what I mean? Like if that's their strategy and they're happy with that. I thought that Pappenhausen was clinical all game. He was just all over the park, didn't really make almost any mistakes. Harry Grant had another Harry Grant game. Like he doesn't have to do anything spectacular either. Harry Grant doesn't need to. He doesn't need to do anything too spectacular. If you're actually watching him and he's just watching when there's a marker just out of play and taking that scoot and things along those lines, and just little disrupting sort of plays that really throw off the rhythm of the game for the Sharks or for the opponent in any sort of game. Every one of those every player brought the best bits of their game into that game, I'd say. And I think that if they do it next week, and we'll get into this bit in a second, but I think if they do it next week and the Panthers have a bit of a slow start, which they kind of did against the Sharks, that could be troublesome for the Panthers next week.
I agree with everything you're saying. I want to do a special shout out to Cam Munster, who I thought was huge and really, really good in terms of just his presence, and he really played to that, I thought, really, really well as well. And actually sucked the Roosters in a number of times, which opened up a lot more space for the likes of Hughes, Pappenhausen, and the likes to really go ahead and make their indents that they did. Munster wasn't supposed to be playing this year. Like, it was supposed to have taken him out the year, this injury, and he's come back. And there was a few times where it looked like he put up a little bit lame or something. I was like, I was like, oh no, don't do this at this time of year. But then he just kept going, and he actually got stronger and better as the game went on. Like, he just wanted, and I thought with 10 to go, 5 to go, game's wrapped up. Either rest him, take him off, or he'd just sit back and do whatever, like he won't do much. He seemed to have wanted the ball even more. And that's when he started getting, he's got his 2 tries. Like, I just thought it was crazy. And it was just a sign of where he's coming. It's sort of like, in a way, he's thinking about it going, I'm not supposed to be here this year. I'm taking advantage of this and I'm going for it. And it felt like Pappy was sort of the same, because I know Pappy's had his moments this year, but he's also had some moments where he's just hasn't been himself, in my opinion, where on the weekend it's sort of like he sort of said to himself, I'm going to go down. I'm going to go down fighting, and I'm going to go down, put my mark on this game if that's what happens. And they were both just enormous. And I know Hughes gets a lot of the raps, and deservedly so. But for those two and the years that they've gone through, I just thought it was incredible.
The one thing I'll never say about Cameron Munster is that he's not a competitor. I think he's possibly the biggest competitor, just that want to win out of almost anyone in the competition. The only other people I would say have that higher or on that same sort of level, I think Gutherson. That's one of the people I think in my head when I think of like drive to want to kind of just win, or just always wants to do that whole 80 minutes, just wants it the entire time, and just never sort of slows down. Out of the Storm sort of spine, I would not say that any of those other 4 have what he has in terms of that. And so that's what he does bring. He brings that no matter where they are in the game. And that's what you can always count on with the Storm, is no matter how down they are in a game, is that they always have that threat of coming back. And that's honestly, a lot of that is him. And Cameron Smith was the same back when he was playing, except he, Billy, and Cronk all had that, which was just disgusting. I mean, it was great, but it was disgusting for anyone else that didn't support them. I agree though. Munster did have an absolutely class game. And I don't like him, so I don't like saying that.
When you're defending him, it must be an absolute head fuck to have to verse him and just know you're not going to be able to switch off. You're going to have to be on your game for 80 minutes, and that's what happened on Friday night. For the Roosters side of things, we'll talk more about the Storm for our big grand final preview show that we'll have. But for the Roosters, obviously that's season ending. When you look at things now, do you say to yourself, was it a failure? Was it a good season? Should they be proud? Where do you sit with the Roosters?
No, I think that they'd have to be proud. Look, the last, I think, 3 or 4 seasons, I think this was the first season in a long time where they even got a full strength side out there. They've had so many injury seasons, and that's why I think they've kept Robinson on. He's still making top 8. No matter, like, there was a few, I don't know if it was 2 years ago or what, but they had like most of their team out for most of the season, and they still made the 8. They're just, I don't know if it's his influence or what it is, but they're just fighters. Now, I don't think that you could call this season, anything other than a success. Obviously, for them, they're not going to be thinking that. They're going to be going into it going, it wasn't a success. We didn't win. We didn't win the whole thing. We didn't take out the whole thing. That's not a success to us. To the fans, I think you'd have to say yes, it is, because they went into that game without their starting halfback and hooker that they've had all season, that have like sort of started to get into the game. Like Brandon Smith started the season. No one was, a fan of him, but he picked it up throughout the season. Sam Walker was starting to really throw together some good games. So, if they start, and one thing is Victor Radley playing with a fractured scapula. Like, what do you mean? Do you understand the amount of pain that he would have been in? And every tackle he made is like, especially with the style that he tackles with, like, what could have been? You know what I'm saying? Like, who knows? But I think it's a pass if you're a fan. But for the playing group, I don't know if you'd call that a pass, because they're losing a lot of players too. So they would have wanted to sort of end on that big win.
That's the big one. That big. I've been trying to think about it the last day or two, and I can't remember the last time a team has lost so many key players in one off season. Like, this has been, like, when you sit back and think about it, you can't put into words. Like, this is a huge indent into their team, into their club. Like, these are big personalities. These are big players on and off the field for this club, and I feel like in a way they're going to look back on this season. I know, yeah, you're right. Brandon Smith and Sammy Walker were huge losses, and then obviously Victor Radley playing basically with one arm was a big blow to him. But in a way, they'd also probably be disappointed, because when you look at that side on paper, even on the Storm game, was still a very, very good side. they got shown up in the spine, in my opinion, and we can quickly have a chat about that. But when you sit back at the start of the season, they would have said to each other, we're going out on a high here. So to finish just short of that, I think it will really get to them. But I think when you sit back in a few weeks' time, you peel things back, you look at it on paper, you go, you know what, they got to probably where they were as a team on the day with the personnel available. If they had Sam Walker and Brandon Smith, maybe a different story. But when I looked at their team and I looked at their performance, especially early on, like after 20 minutes or so, it just looked like last week was a lot. That was their big sort of game, and they demolished the Roosters last week, and it was they demolished the Sea Eagles last week, and it was just one of those games where the Storm were just on a level that the Roosters couldn't get to, and that's no offense to them, but just the Storm were just probably 2 or 3 levels above them.
The greatest example of that would be when the Roosters sort of started that comeback, and instead of just sitting back and trying to weather the storm, well, I didn't even think of that, but instead of sort of sitting back and just trying to hold off until they sort of ran out of energy, the Storm went, nah, sweet. And when they went and scored their own try and then sort of just went, no, we're going to take over this game here. That's the biggest example of sort of what you're talking about. They didn't just wait. They went, no, that's not happening, and scored, went in and did their own thing. So I think starting into that game, I always said that the Storm were going to win. And, I think a lot of people did with the injuries that the Roosters had. What are you going to do?
Look, it was a loss. There's always got to be some players, I guess, held accountable for these sorts of losses. And unfortunately, for me, it was probably the halves. I think it was hard because they got bashed for a lot of that game. And we've already spoken about the Collins loss and how big that was, and that would have impacted the playmakers a lot by getting on that front foot. But it was like, if we're going to call a spade, I don't think they were at that level. They just seemed to, Keary for mine got targeted in defence a lot. Hughes basically made him and Crichton, I guess, together look like amateurs in a way. And for Crichton especially, that was shocking. I haven't seen Crichton play a game like that for a long, long time. And if anything, he was probably an example of this Roosters. He looked a bit tired, and he's probably looked a bit tired for a couple of weeks now, actually. But he's been able to just get by, do what he can do without being exceptional and being that huge monster that he was for a lot of the year. And I'm not having a go at him because it's a long, long season. He's done it for the Blues. He's done it everywhere. He looked like he was ready for a bit of a break. So he's been sensational. But anything point out to you regarding that loss? Was it the halves or even Teddy? Teddy was busy. Teddy was trying his ass off. It just nothing was working.
No, you know what? The thing is, it's a bit funny about that is I wouldn't say that I can even pinpoint it to a certain one person or any two people, because I just think, honestly, they just were outplayed in almost every aspect around the park. Like, I just don't think I can pinpoint one spot when just around the park, forwards, backs, and everything, it just felt like the Storm were all over them the whole game. Like, it just felt like it was a slow, windy, grind to the end of the game. Like, it honestly was boring to me. And, the funny thing about football, I guess, is that the teams that do the best play boring. Typically, the teams that do the best, like, you can have a good game and you can play flashy and win a game. But if you want to win a season, typically you play boring and you play slow, grindy, get another team into your game. And look, both the two grand final teams do that the best in the comp. But yeah, I can't pinpoint it to a person at all.
No, you're probably right. It probably in a way just explains more and more the Storm dominance. Second game up, Penrith Panthers 26, beating the Sharkies 6, who put up a fight. I know you sort of mentioned at the start it was the Penrith Panthers started slow. If anything, I actually felt like the Sharkies put up a bit of a fight, and they actually started to play a bit like that team we've seen midway of the year around that Magic Round period when they did beat the Storm down in Melbourne. They had a couple of those key injuries out, but they kept turning up for each other. And I thought we'd seen that at the start of the game, and Penrith sort of, I don't know if they were expecting it. I think they got caught by surprise, and they were lucky that they have certain players that we'll talk about. But I'm going to give Sharky some credit. I didn't think that was a smash up. Like, the scoreline for me was a weird reflection, because I think it was a little bit closer than the 26-6 scoreline represents.
Yeah, look, I'm going to slightly disagree with you. Like, I'm on the right side. I think the Sharks definitely came. I definitely think that the Sharks came to play. Don't get me wrong, right? They did. But I also think with the rain, we know that Penrith don't play well in the rain. It's like a documented fact. They tend to not play as well in the rain, and just that's where the handling errors were coming in. They're just used to playing on a dry track, and you know what? I think that's a whole completely different game if that is on a dry track the whole time. I think if it's a completely dry game, they blew them away from the start. So they had those handling errors. They were just letting the Sharks sort of in, and you know, it doesn't hurt that the Sharks obviously were pressuring them and making those big plays and stuff like that. But I just think in a dry track, they don't make those sillier areas early on. And I think that scoreline is completely different.
It was it's funny because you speak about the Sharks and the like, and you have to try and start to look at reasons why it sort of happened and the loss and the like. But Trindle, I thought, was really good. Like it was an early moment, and it felt like actually, first of all, throughout the whole game, it felt like that all their errors were at crucial times for the Sharks. It was like they were getting on the front foot. They finally got the Penrith Panthers on the back foot, which doesn't happen much, and you've got to take advantage of when you have that. And they'd make a mistake, a silly error. They'll look back at that and they'll watch this game, and there'll be a number of opportunities they'll see there. They'll go, you know what? There's a part of us that feel like we've let this slip, because if they just iced one or two of those moments and got on the front foot, it could have been a completely different ballgame. They had the Panthers a bit shaken for a while throughout that game, and if they just every time they had it, it was a silly error. It was a bit frustrating to watch, to be honest, because as a neutral, it was good to see some, like, obviously we watched the smashing the first game, to then go ahead and watch that game. It was a lot closer. It would have been good to see the Sharkies really go at it. The halves. There was a lot of talk about the Sharkies halves in the lead up to this game. I've said a few of us on the page last week on the podcast and that as well. Trindle, that early 40-20 attempt could have been a huge play. Edwards was so good to keep that in. I don't know how he did it. That was almost perfection.
Well, it was risky too.
It was very risky. It was. It almost resulted in a try.
Yeah. He would have been kicking himself for the rest of that game if that happened. But I mean, I still think they would have won it. But yeah, it could have been a huge game changer. Who knows?
Yeah, I think Trindle held his own. Nico Hines, I want to ask you, because you haven't really had a chance to say much about Nico Hines. You haven't been on a few of the podcasts recently. What were your thoughts around Nico's game on the weekend?
On the weekend, where was he? Was he there? Did he play? Like, don't get me wrong, I like Nico. I do. I think he's a good bloke, but so far I've never seen him as a big game player. He was there because I saw the amount of bad balls he threw. No, I do. I really like Nico, and I feel bad for him because he seems like a really good dude, but just I've never once seen him play in a big game where he's actually sort of been that positive contribution or played to his pay grade. Do you know what I mean? He's getting paid a lot of money at the Sharks to be that guy, and you've got Trindle, who's not on anywhere near as much as he is, stepping up way harder than he has. Personally, I don't know. I don't think he's the halfback. I don't think he should be a halfback necessarily. I think maybe he could potentially shift back to fullback and be a ball-playing fullback, or I don't know, along the lines of maybe a 5'8", but you got to drop his pay packet there. And if he's going in to do that sort of 5'8" role, who knows? It's tough. There was a lot of, he didn't do a lot of the kicking. Trent was doing a lot of the kicking. Like, why is he a big name player not doing that? I just don't.
I think there's been a realization the last couple of weeks from Fitzy and the Sharks boys that, and there was talk that Nico came back early. He's still feeling the effects of the injury. Trindle, for mine, was the chief playmaker now for a couple of weeks of that team. And to be honest, I actually think they looked better for it. And Nico taking that backward step. It looked like to me, Trindle was the halfback. Nico was the 5'8". I don't want to bash the bloke, but you're 100% right about was he there in terms of there was big moments, and we've seen when we're about to unpack the Penrith game, their big man, their big money guy delivered and went looking for the game when it was there and needed to be won. unfortunately, and it's due to the price packet, when these players and their managers go to clubs and want the big dollars, you've got to deal with this. You need to understand that this is going to come for you because Trindle doesn't get it when he has an off game because he's on
Yeah.
more than less than half of what you're on. It's
Hmm.
just what happens because you're $1 million man effectively. You're going to cop it. And the Sharkies needed him to step up on the weekend, whether he's 100% fit or not. I'm not going to use that excuse because as like the first game, we've seen Bradley tackling his ass off with a broken shoulder. Like you can't. It's getting into a grand final. Your team was on. Your team was actually on. Your forwards were laying a foundation for you to work off, and I thought your backs were working quite hard. There's got to be some serious conversations had in that at that football club in the off season between Nico, between Fitzy, and probably the chairman. And I'm not saying about can I leave or whatever, but it has to be about we need to fix this club up a bit more and stabilize it in terms of what your role is. Because if you are a 5'8", you're not one of the top 5'8s in the game at the moment because of everything that's happening, and you're just confident you shot. We need to work this out monetary wise because we love you, we want you here, but it's also going to put a huge strain on not just the cap and us, but yourself. You actually need to realize that this expectation is because of the money.
Yeah.
No one cares about what you do if you're only on 500,000-600,000 with us. You hardly talk about you. It's yeah.
I think he's a player who does deliver when there's not that much expectation, and you can see it because when he first came across to the Sharks, you saw what he was doing. You know, that Dally M player. I still don't think he deserved that personally. That's just a quiet opinion of mine. I don't think he deserved that Dally M that he got last year, but he's thriving off his second rollers and off those sort of players who are doing a lot of the other stuff around him. I don't think that he's all that spectacular on his own. He doesn't have that individual brilliance that the Storm halves have, and like your Cleary and things like that. And I do think you're right that his confidence is shot. I think that he's going into games. He's going in like twice. He's had the opportunity to play for the Blues, and he's just been shown that he's not as good as maybe he thought he was. That could be it. I think he might have come across the Sharks. He was doing really well. Go to Dally M, like, oh, I'm one of the best halves in the competition. Well, are you a top 5? Are you less? It's very difficult to tell, but that's might be the sort of stuff that's going through his mind there.
It's quite funny because in hindsight, it's obviously a great thing, but I look back and I actually think to myself, if I was his coach, the first 5 touches of the football on the weekend, I probably would have told him to run and actually just cop a hit and actually get into the game that way instead of trying to say like a pass. And if it forces a mistake, he makes a mistake, that's his confidence straight down, where at least if he's just running the ball, tucked under the wing, even if it's just a general hit up, even if he just gets it and cops a whack, you're in the game then. You've had a few touches already. It's safe. You've got to the play of the ball. Away you go after that. Like just get into the game and then go instead of having that pressure of being that chief playmaker and needing to come up with the big plays. We talk about that. We've got to talk about Penrith Panthers. I said that the Sharkies really put up a fight, especially early on. And I feel like Nathan Cleary, I've lost words now to describe this bloke. I just think he's head and shoulders the best player in the game, and he's just what he can do on the biggest stage. I'm surprised any of us are still surprised by it. Like I sat there on Saturday night watching it. Even that first try to Alamotti where he just summed everything up perfectly and he worked that whole set out so nicely.
I'll give him that. That ball was incredible. Sorry, that ball was incredible. I'll give him that. That was. I looked at that and just went, "Wow, what a bullet!" But perfect, just perfect. There was nothing anyone could have done about that. Because no one expected it. No one's going to expect that ball. It just was fantastic. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just had to say about that.
No, I finished anyway. So you came in at the perfect time, mate.
that ball was incredible. And then it's funny what you said about the 40-20 from Trindle, like it could have been such a game-changing moment. Honestly, Cleary just went, hold my beer. Yeah. This is how it's done.
This is how you kick him.
This is how you kick him. And it was an undefendable one. Fullback wasn't getting there. Perfectly well kicked. Like no one's getting to that ball. And we know he can kick a 2-point field goal on a whim from anywhere in the field. Like So he's got that game winning kick in him whenever he needs it. Like he's just got that in the back pocket there as well that you don't even see all that often, but he's got it in him. He's done it enough times under pressure, and I think that's the key. See, a lot of people say that halves come into their best football at about 27. He isn't even there yet. He isn't even at the best he'll be, and that's what's terrifying. Like he is a guy who could win the most premierships any half has ever won. And I mean, like in the NRL era, he could do that. He's already close. Like I don't actually know what the number is, but he'd have to be close. Like it can't be, and he's done it in a row. He's not doing it slowly over his career. He's just like, yeah, let's just go get another one. Sweet, we're on.
It's scary.
This isn't necessarily a preview because obviously that's happening, but I've said all season, and I know that they haven't been coming first this whole time, but I've said that the Panthers are going to win the comp, and I'm sticking by that. I will hold that they're going to win this game next week. So that's my early call for everybody there. And a lot of it is on the back of him. Obviously, if he wasn't fit, I think Storm in it. I do. But I just think they've been coming second without him. This is my biggest thing. They've been coming second through the entire competition without him, and we know what he can do. We just said it. You add him into that team on a team that is coming second without their halfback. What happened to our team when we lost our halfback? Anyway, moving on from that. Moving on from that real quick. A team that is coming second through their whole comp without their halfback, and a lot of the time without their fullback. They're clearly safe around the park. They're good everywhere on the field. You don't need, and I think the same thing happened to Hughes that happened to Luai this year, is that kind of player that had that other person taking over for them a lot of the time got to come into their own, and I think that's actually going to be a positive thing for both of them. It's been positive for Luai. I thought maybe they'd struggle and fight for it maybe when they came back. No, he's just shifted straight back into that spot. Knows clear he's the big dog around town at the Panthers, and he is. It's just they're winning the comp. I'll call it now. I'd put my ass on it.
Huge. It's just his aura. On that field. When he's on there, you just know that you can never count him out. And it was funny. When was it? I think it was today at some point. Maybe it was yesterday. I don't know when it was, but they had a replay of last year's grand final, and I was watching that, and there was a point where Ezra Mann scored his third try, and I was thinking, have I slept here? Because how the hell did the Broncos lose this? And then all of a sudden, Cleary just like snapped his fingers and went into this mode where it wasn't like that sort of performance on the weekend, but it was similar in terms of the way that he knew early on that the Sharks were there to fight and to really go at it. And he just had some key moments where he just iced and nailed and made sure he was there involved with it. So it was a fantastic performance. Credit to their forwards. Isaiah Yeo is remarkable at this NRL level. He works so well in this system. He's so key to everything that they do at that club. And you could just tell by him and how much it meant to that playing group, him obviously breaking the record for the most games by a Penrith Panther on the weekend. And just his game overall just continues to amaze me. Just Nathan Cleary is the freak. Nathan Cleary is the guy that gets everything done. We know that. But without Isaiah Yeo there, I always question just how deadly in a way Nathan Cleary could be, because they work so well together. I don't want them to ever part ways. It just works.
I mean, I'd love for them to part ways so someone else could win a comp for once. That'd be nice. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Like I give Yo a lot of crap at the Blues level, and I always say I don't think he should be picked for the Blues. And what happened? He didn't get picked this time, and he came off the bench. No, he came off the bench.
No, he's bench prop.
He came off the bench as a prop, which is fine. That's his role. I'm okay with that at that level, because you can't do the ball playing that you do at the NRL level. But at NRL level, against some people who aren't on that Origin sort of level or height at that stage, and with the ball playing that he has and around the team that he's had for however many years, yes, you're right. It works. They know how to play with each other, right? And I know that Luai is going to get more money, but he could have been part of a dynasty if he stayed there, because they wanted him to stay there. If he was willing to take less money to stay there, Cleary, Yo, and all those people, kind of your key players, could stay there and they shifted around it. They could be winning comps for years. I think that I'm kind of hoping that when Luai goes, obviously they don't win one again for a little while. It'd be nice, but with Nathan Cleary being who he is, it's just so hard to think that they're not going to win more. Like even if it isn't this year, and I'm still saying that it's going to be, like, they'll be back in the 8 next year. There's no reason why they won't be. They'll be back in the 8 the year after that, unless there's injuries through Cleary and Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards, we haven't even spoken about, by the way, absolute freak, just an absolute freak. I think, but I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to say it. Best fullback in the comp.
Yeah.
I love Gutho.
No,
I do.
it's a fair whack, I guess, from you out the ballpark, and he has been like there was already like he obviously had that, I guess, lengthy in a way injury towards the back end of the season, which I think a lot of people forgot just how good he was all year. And Tedesco has been so consistent all year, so I'll always give Teddy credit for this year, but Edwards is, I feel like, the best fullback in the game at the moment. There is no denying that. And you talk about players not playing fully fit. I don't think he is fully fit still. I think that injury is plaguing him a little bit, but you can't tell. That's the good thing with him. You can't tell. And I want to give credit to their back three all up to, actually, because I thought they worked so hard to get Penrith on the front foot with their sets and really give their forwards a break. So To'o, Taruva, and Edwards, I think all three were really, really good.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you on that, especially with that Taruva try saver with the Dylan Edwards tap in that we were talking about. Like, he had to race Katoa, and Katoa is not slow, and I didn't think Taruva had that in him. If I'm being honest with you, I didn't think he did. But full credit to him for getting there, because Toa wasn't getting to that if it was on the other side of the field. Like, if it was against Mulatalo, we know Toa's not winning that race, and it's a try. So they're lucky that it happened on that side of the field, not the other side. I was just
Go.
Oh, sorry. I was just say one thing. I've just sort of thought about it in my head, and I've realized there are heaps of similarities between the Storm and the Panthers about their season this year. You just kind of, something you said triggered me on that. Both have fullbacks that are probably playing a bit injured. Let's be honest, because Paps is injured. We all know that he's not 100%, even though he's playing really well. Edwards, the same thing. They both had their main half, or one of their main halves, be taken out for big chunks of the season, and their other half has had to step up as their main. I know that Munster's technically their 5/8, but we know that he does a lot for them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd say he probably was just as dominant as Hughes, whereas the other side of things, Luai's had to step up. There were other ones, but I forgot them. That's okay. They're just those two, I guess. They're the main ones, but there were other ones I just had in my head, and I'm just totally spaced.
It happens. The podcasting game, it happens. You've got some points, and all of a sudden they vanish into thin air. You're like, where have they been? Just on this, one question on the grand final. Happy with it? No, not who's going to win. Just in your thoughts in general. Of me personally, I think we've got the best two teams of the competition all year. I think I'm really looking forward to the grand final. I think it's going to be one of the classic grand finals. I think it's going to be really, really close. And sort of some of the points you're already alluding to, like how good their spines are. They've matched, like the Penrith have a great forward pack, which probably just gets the Storm pack, especially with no Nelson and stuff for Solomona. But flashy backs for both teams as well. I'm really looking forward. I'm glad that we've got the two, for my best teams this year, and we get to watch them just to go at it.
Look, all year it's been a 2-horse race. You knew who was going to be in the grand final all year. All this final series, I've gone, look, I was bored over the last few games. I can't lie to you. I've been bored because you know who's going to win. It was never in doubt almost the entire time. Like, obviously in the games where it was like Bordeaux versus Manly, I was like, cool, whoever wins, you're going on next week to lose. I'm sorry, but you are not going to continue on in this final series. You just don't have it in you right now. And maybe next year, who knows? But you knew who was going to be first and second. We knew it. You're right. They're the two best teams in the comp. It's going to be, I think, an exciting game of football. Neither of them are boring teams, especially not the Storm. Storm are more a flary, maybe like team. But we saw over the weekend that both teams have that grind. And so there's a good chance of it being actually a very low-scoring affair. One thing I would say probably against Penrith, the only chance I would argue that the Storm have is actually to get ahead early. I think, because like I said, I think Penrith are going to win. But I think if Storm are going to win it, they need to get ahead and by a lot early. Like, if the Panthers have that slow 5-10 minute period, 15 minutes, whatever, before they kick into gear, which they will at some point in the game, they will kick into gear because they have that experience to not freak out if they're down by a bit in the grand final. Storm need to be ahead by enough points to weather that, if that happens. If Panthers get ahead early, and I know I said that the Storm can sort of never be counted out, but with the way that the Panthers play, they're not catching up to them. So it's going to be a good game. It will.
There you have it. We have a very big week planned, I guess, for the page as well. A lot of posts, a lot of podcasts and that around this grand final week. I can't wait. This sort of better than Christmas, in my opinion, for us mad footy fans. And really looking forward to it. I hope you've all enjoyed this episode. You'll be seeing a lot more of us over the next couple of days. If you haven't already, make sure you do go ahead and like us on social media, especially Facebook, YouTube as well. Subscribe. You'll be able to catch us on the Wednesday live show, which hoping to do quite big, get a lot of the boys on and have a bit of a chat about footy, have a bit of a laugh, have a bit of a chat about the grand final side of things as well. So just sort of have a bit of a fun for the year in review and that sort of thing. Try and get all the boys on and everyone, all the fans, everyone out there, all the community, a bit of a chat. So go ahead, give us some love on the social media pages. Thanks to Jakey Boy for jumping on and just hit that bell button on your podcast pages as well to get all your notifications. There's a few big player interviews that come out from tomorrow all week. It's just a huge week for the page. So thank you and enjoy your afternoon, night, day, breakfast, whenever you're listening to us.